What's up? It is Tuesday. It's Rumor Innuendo. I'm Dominic D'Angelo, and we do have a Robert here, but it's not the Robert you're thinking of. It is Robert DeFelice. He is of Fightful.com. We used to work together at WrestleZone.com, and now he does some other stuff that we'll talk about later on. But Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know about you, but I don't think this audience may.
Yeah, like you said, I work mostly at Fightful.com, and thank you, by the way, Dom, for inviting me to do this. This was a nice treat. Work at Fightful. I have done some work for WrestleZone. I've done some work for Inside the Ropes. I've done work for eWrestling News. I've done a lot of things on a lot of different platforms. Currently, I'm doing some other stuff with you that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, man.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. And holy smokes, I bet Robert Karpelis is feeling a little bit of FOMO not being here because it was quite the Monday Night Raw. We got some good folks in the chat here, as always. We got Anthony Santos. Good afternoon, gents. A moment of silence for those that were murdered by the Wyatt Sicks last night. Amazing ending to Raw. We will definitely be talking about that. Christopher Santos says, yo, 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 let's R&I. David Von Boegland, click this regular and now an RVD2 regular and now a One True Sport regular. Talk about that maybe a little bit later on. What up, guys? How we doing? Dre Owens just made it, showing a little late leg to Wayne. That's a pretty funny line. Happy Tuesday, bros. Joseph Wade Walters and Liam Evans, One True Sport traveling champion. Hey, welcome.
Hey, yo.
So let's get to it, though, Robert. We will cover this in chronological order. I typically like to bounce around, but Robert Karpelis has trained me in the fashion of doing it chronologically. So let me bring up the rundown here real quick. But Raw did kick off with Damian Priest after retaining his championship, obviously, at Clash at the Castle, giving the opportunity to a returning Seth Rollins. What did you think of this opening segment? And is Rollins the appropriate opponent for Damian Priest heading into Money in the Bank?
I thought this opening segment was a tremendous success. First and foremost, because nobody knew Seth Rollins was coming back. Fightful.com with the Fightful Select Scoops usually has the Raw rundown, and this was listed as a Damian Priest promo. So to kick off Raw with Rollins coming back, and then just to say, by the way, here's your Money in the Bank main event outside of the ladder matches, that's huge news. And I think Rollins might stand a good chance at just picking up where he left off and maybe walking out of Toronto with that World Heavyweight Championship intact.
See, I'm very intrigued by it. I like Damian Priest showing the cojones. Promo code Rimmer for Blue Chew. We'll get to that later on. But we will I think I like him kind of laying the hammer down, just being like, listen, you can have this title shot with I don't need you to earn it. I don't need you anything. I want you in this match. And I kind of think of this a different way, Robert, where it's like, I think this is going to be a proving ground for Damian Priest, and it will be like a big retaining of his championship. Because I think if you are going to move the title off of him at SummerSlam, maybe against Gunther, then it makes a lot of sense for him to beat somebody really credible like a Seth Rollins. And I think they see a lot of stuff in Damian, whether that is as a heel or a baby face. But yeah, how did you think he was portrayed overall on this episode of Raw?
Oh, he was babyface.
Yeah,
he was a huge babyface. He was
kind of felt
like
that too.
The best description I could give is maybe like an Undertaker-esque in 2003 when he was the big evil kind of big man babyface. But he's definitely a face here. I don't know how I feel about him being like, I'm so proud to be champion, when it's like he hasn't won a single match without some kind of shenanigans. And I think this will be a good showing for him. But ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if they just said, hey, Rollins would be a great babyface champion for Gunther to beat at SummerSlam. Because that's ultimately where this is going.
Yeah, maybe they don't want Damian to lose so definitively to Gunther, and maybe they want to build Gunther to beat somebody like Rollins. But I think if I had to really predict something, I think Damian's gonna beat Rollins, and because I think Rollins has the credibility and the cachet to, if he loses clean to Damian Priest, he won't be very much harmed by that. Whereas
I don't know, man. Rollins took an ass whooping both nights. Oh, sorry, he took
that's fine.
Really got kicked at WrestleMania and both nights just taking it pretty hard. So he needs to win, and he needs to win big time. And also, I think it's unfortunate that the Raw scene kind of felt like, okay, we got through Jey Uso. Now let's just get back to McIntyre. And hey, Rollins is back. We really didn't establish anybody in the 2 months of Rollins being away and, having that open spot. But maybe it's just for the better. Maybe this is just Rollins' belt.
You know what? And I think it's just the injury bug hit everybody when it comes to who maybe Damian could have had against us some like high level opponents, whether that would have been like a CM Punk or you kind of name it. Even Drew for this, he was a little laid up for a little bit here too. So you kind of factor all that in and what they were kind of dealing with. I think I'm really intrigued by this, and I really hope that they kind of strap the rocket to Damian, just even in the short term thing of him beating Rollins. I think you're going to see more value in Damian winning than you would in Seth Rollins winning. And I don't think I understand how he was positioned at WrestleMania, but I think too he was positioned like in a big way on both nights. He was a big factor on both nights, so I don't necessarily think that him is getting like depleted too much. So I'm okay with him losing if that's what they decide to do at Money in the Bank, more so than him winning even. So
yeah, ultimately, I think he's going to be fine if he loses. He's got nothing. He's, first ballot Hall of Famer whenever he needs to go in. And I do think Priest could use the bump, but it's also one of those weird things because Priest is TV younger. Like he's newer to WWE TV than Rollins. Rollins is still the younger guy.
He's younger. It's crazy to think.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
No, I thought ultimately strong way to start off Raw. Nice surprise, and it really made you feel like, okay, cool, we're kicking into high gear as we get towards SummerSlam.
Absolutely. I think it was a really refreshing way to open Raw unexpectedly, as we talked about. But then following that up, we had, I believe it was, I have on the list here, Braun Strowman taking on Chad Gable, which was unexpected. Was that the opening match? I can't remember, Robert. Oh, I'm missing one.
That was the first match because there was a vignette that showed Chad Gable being like, hey, my goons got in the way here. Give me another match with Sammy. And Adam Pearce said, no, you're gonna have to earn it. And he said, that's fine. Give me any opponent. And he said, well, good for you. I'll give you an opponent. I give you Braun Strowman.
Yes. And you know what? I got to mention that. I'm glad you brought that up too, because I really like Adam Pearce as an authority figure. I think he's really finding his groove as like being this guy that you can kind of relate to. And that's kind of likable as this guy we have in charge of Raw. And he's showing a little bit of charisma and personality, which I really enjoy. And so it was kind of a fun little play to have him, Braun Strowman, squash Chad Gable, and then further propagate what we saw with Otis, Maxine, and Tozawa going on after the fact in the seemingly breakup, perhaps, of Alpha Academy. What did you think of that, Robert?
I thought the breakup was maybe a bit overdue because I'm ready for Gable to just slide in the Creed brothers and potentially Ivy Nile in these roles and just have him as the new frontman of a better Diamond Mine. And I think that's the way that you would go. But of course, we know, sadly, we're going to talk about Chad Gable's no longer with us. He took a horrible shot to the head at the end of Raw. So let's see how they get around to that.
Well, yeah. So this in a vacuum. So without knowledge of what happened later on, I wasn't as big of a fan of how they played it off. I've been waiting for this to kind of happen. I think everybody has, for Otis to make the big turn and stuff like that. But we saw, Otis kind of flip out on Gable, and and the crowd popped for it, and that's good. But all this unfolded backstage too, where he officially quit Alpha Academy. He walked out, took his ball and went home, kind of deal. And Chad Gable was left standing there. Now, I didn't like that because I just thought it was like you could have really could have made this such a big moment. But what we had happen later on might be a little plug in the old drain there, the leak of this. So I think there might be a little bit something more going on here. We'll talk about that.
There might be, because you're right. I thought it was weird that he didn't get physical with him and that there was still like a verbal confrontation of, hey, where are you going? Oh, we're leaving, coach. And then
Yeah.
he says, no, you're expelled. I did like the line before we get to the end of the show of, I'll do something that you couldn't do. I'll win Money in the Bank and I'll actually cash it in.
Yeah.
But maybe with the thing at the end of the show, maybe we're not exactly done with Otis being sympathetic towards Chad.
Exactly. So moving forward on that, we had a Money in the Bank qualifier with Zelina Vega, Kiana James, and Io Sky. Io Sky qualifies in this match. Think it's probably the right move because she was the winner last year, and you kind of want to see her what she can do again. Can she repeat and be the next women's Money in the Bank yet again? So a decent match. Any thoughts on this, Robert?
Fine match. I think we had a nice little interaction with Vega and Liv Morgan, who was wearing
Yes.
Dom's purple cow vest.
Yep.
And I'm not a fan of Kiana taking the pin because I think she
Right.
shouldn't have been brought up from NXT to just be the next era of someone to take the pin.
Right.
But obviously, when you're building a ladder match, of the 3 women given, you want the best worker, and that's hands down Io Sky. And I think it'll be a lot of fun.
I think so too. And I agree. Yeah, I know they're probably trying to build Zelina for Liv, obviously, so she probably shouldn't take the pin, but maybe find somebody else to be in there other than Kiana James, if you know that she is going to be losing. But yes, then we had Sami Zayn come out and be like, hey, I'm done with Gable. That's it. I'm open and ready for anybody else. And sure enough, we get Braun Breaker coming out. And where it seems like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. This is going to happen. Sheamus comes out, throws it as the curveball, and it basically sets up Sheamus and Braun Breaker for a match later on in the night of Raw. So I think this Matt Camp actually mentioned this on the Wrestling Matt. I produced that show. There is a size difference between everybody here. Braun Breaker is smaller than both these men. But we get to see a really good match later on here between Sheamus and Braun Breaker. And let's jump to that one real quick. I know I said chronologically, but I'm throwing that out the window here. What did you think of that match? I really liked it, Robert, but let's get your opinion.
I thought the match was really solid. I like, 2 meaty dudes that can just go at it. I thought there was one hiccup where I think Braun went for Frankensteiner, and it ended up being a bit more of an impromptu monkey flip off the top rope, but I thought they played it off well. I think Braun is tremendous. I see a comment here that says Braun was channeling his uncle in this promo. No, he was channeling Goldberg. Braun is somehow like the next generation of Goldberg. He literally said Sami Zayn was next on the list. No, I'm a huge fan of both of these guys going after the IC belt. The Sheamus needs it. Breaker can really be elevated by it, and Sami Zayn is the best workhorse to be holding this belt. But this match was a lot of fun. Not a fan of the DQ finish. I am a fan of how they worked around it by having Sheamus get up and attack Kaiser, who had attacked him, and then Kaiser goes for the little I'm gonna run around the ring and do the drop kick on the steps, and Braun runs the other side and spears him for costing him the match.
Cut him in half.
I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And Braun he's so much fun. I know a few people who aren't into him, but I think it's because for me, he's such a throwback of these just insane monster athletes that look great, that he's got intensity. He doesn't need to go 35 minutes in the ring, and that's not necessarily bad. You know what I mean? Like he's just a fun callback, and I really enjoy watching him spear people in half.
And look, I know size is something that can be a little telling sometimes, and definitely like a barometer of, where this guy should be sometimes on the card. That's kind of an old hat thing in a lot of ways. And now on top of it too, you got to think, and I know haven't really mentioned this on television, but he was a former football player, like big time. He walked on, I believe, to the Ravens camp too. So it's like he's got some pedigree when it comes to that. And so him spearing like Goldberg does makes a lot of sense, and it can put anybody down on that. So yeah, I think Breaker is just a-okay. They're establishing him as this like just dominant, chaotic force, and the fans are eating it up. And that spear was an exclamation point to all that too. And yeah, I like this story between Sheamus, Braun, and Sammy now, because yeah, there's stakes for Sheamus here. That's the only title he has not won. And then yeah, Sammy, can he continue on his streak, or is Braun going to be the next up and coming Intercontinental Champion?
And I like this as a way to keep Braun out of the ladder match that you might otherwise feel like maybe he should win as the hot up and comer.
Yeah,
That's a really nice way to do it.
Absolutely. And absolutely, I totally agree with that. And two, if you're positioning Braun as more of a heel, ultimately, it does make sense in retrospect that he wasn't the one to unseat Gunther at WrestleMania and had Sammy do it. Now, I've said plenty of times on here how I was not a fan of Sammy beating Gunther. I thought it should have been Braun. But like what Sammy has done as an Intercontinental Champion and as a babyface, I think has really made established a new connection with fans, I think. And I like that a lot. So,
I can see what you're saying, because you want to make a star with Braun by having him beat Gunther, but I think that Sammy was the right guy because Sammy can carry on that spirit of the fighting Intercontinental Champion. He had never won that title as a babyface. Like, he had never gotten that moment as this version of that character. So I thought it was the right move. I wasn't sure about turning Breaker heel, but I think as time goes on, it's the best move because he's more, the intensity is more there to kind of get people to boo him as he spears their favorites and all the guys who can, outwork him, but he's just running right through them.
Yeah, I agree. And no, that's a great point about Sammy being a babyface Intercontinental Champion. It was never that, indeed. So, hey, the main event was Jey Uso taking on Rey Mysterio and Finn Balor in the Money in the Bank qualifying match. Jey Uso, he's the one to win it. It makes a lot of sense. I'm pretty surprised though, like they did not include Rey Mysterio in this mix. Like maybe he was another name to qualify, or Finn Balor for that matter, especially what they set up earlier in the evening.
Yeah, I thought they were going Finn. So I'll say this: I thought they were going to go Finn.
Oh, really? See, I always thought Jay was going to win this, but I was kind of surprised that they put Finn in.
Well, when they set that up in the backstage segment where, Priest is like, yeah, I'm sure you're going to win. And by the way, who can cash in on? I'm thinking, okay, we know that Uncle Howdy is coming. We know Jay has the Fireflies. He'll probably just stick his new crew on Jay, and that's how we get a feud for him. We get a feud for Jay, and we put Finn Balor in the Money in the Bank. What they did was completely out of left field from that prediction.
Yes, it was completely out of left field. Yeah, and I'm really liking Finn Balor right now and what he's kind of doing as like this kind of soldier in the ranks, also playing a quote unquote kind of father figure to Dom in a way. And it's a really fun dynamic with Judgment Day. And for what we were saying earlier about Damian, I like too how he kind of walked in on Liv and Dom in the back with the zipper of the vest. And he's like, hey, what's going on? Come on. And he's like talking to him in Spanish and being like, but kind of laying it on the line with Liv and being like, Jesus, this is nuts. So like kind of like the voice of reason almost. And I think that furthers his identity as a babyface, I think, as we're moving forward here.
I do think we're going to get the surprise being that Dom is actually loyal to Rhea and that Rhea sticks with Dom. The more time goes on, the more I think that's the way it's going to be because, enough weeks have passed now that if Dom was going to show interest, be into what Liv Morgan is doing, he could just do it. Like there's nothing stopping him from just giving into that. But I think it's going to end up being maybe Rhea and Dom and Damian against JD, Finn, and Liv.
Interesting. That's interesting. And yeah, they've kind of set the table a little bit for that too,
But then, of course, JD would have to be alive, and he's not after the events of last night's Monday Night Raw.
That we'll get to that very chilling moment. But folks, guys, if you want to give your woman or your lover a different kind of chill, may I talk to you about BlueChew.com? This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. Let's talk about sex, guys. Remember the days when you were always ready to go? Now you can increase your performance and get the extra confidence in bed. Listen up, BlueChew.com. Blue Chew is a unique service that delivers in the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable tablets at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online, so no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew tablets are made in the USA and prepared and direct to your door in a discreet package. So does it work? Don't you think you need it? Try it for a month and see. You're gonna love it. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover the options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. And we got a special deal for you guys. Try Blue Chew free when you use promo code RUMOR at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. Promo code RUMOR to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And hey, we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. So
you would really think the code would be Innuendo, but that's use that code rumor and be more ready apparently than Dominic Mysterio is whenever Liv Morgan arrives on the scene, because this dude just freezes up every single time, and you don't need to do that with Blue Chew.
Geez,
so get on it, guys.
You're better at this than I am.
I
should have to do the ad read. But hey, yes, let's get to it. The Raw was not over after Jey Uso won. The lights dimmed, and sure enough, we get the debut of what we later learned to be the Wyatt Sicks and Uncle Howdy. And man, it starts off with Nikki Cross, who we're assuming is that, and by all accounts, it is her because she shared a picture online of herself with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then she crawled out like the ring, and then she pointed to the back, and sure enough, chaos. It was Goodfellas meets Halloween meets all this kind of stuff with this shot. As we saw, just a complete massacre as they've been teasing from gorilla position to the hallway to what we mentioned about earlier with Chad Gable. And sure enough, Uncle Howdy walks out. We see a version of Huskus Pig. We see a version of Rambling Rabbit. We see a version of Mercy the Buzzard, and they all walk out. Uncle Howdy grabs that lantern and blows it out, saying we're here. And that's the end of the show. Robert, how much did this resonate with you?
Oh, let's start with the positives. I think this was maybe the greatest single camera experience in WWE ever.
Wow.
With just, Nikki points to the back and you're just following and you see these bodies on the ground, and you've got what we assume is Eric Rowan with the mallet and the rabbit that also had the skull mask that Luke Harper used to wear. That's a nice little touch there.
That's a good point.
You keep going. I saw Dom laid out.
You did see Dom?
Dom was in the, he was in the first, as you're walking in, if you freeze it, there's Dom laid out. I see a comment here from the Wrestling Old Head that says, he saw Road Dogg. I missed all of the producers. I didn't see any of the, I didn't see Triple H. I didn't see Bobby Roode or anything. I saw Gable, obviously, with looked like, honestly, they looked like they took something and shot him in the head.
Right.
I saw Strowman laid out. There, JD was out by right where you're going through the curtain to go into Gorilla, and there's blood all over there. It was the kind of shot that made me go, if Raw wasn't 3 hours, I would literally just say, all right, next week's canceled, and it's the Wyatt show.
Well, Robert, I kind of had the same kind of thought process when it came to that, because it was like, man, you got to really show that this affected everybody. And even if you have to do a bare bones kind of episode of Raw where production is down, think the quality of you just see it's all stripped down. There's people aren't available. There's some issues that you're just having to try to deal with as people are recovering from what happened last week. I think you can really follow this up in such a unique way that plays to what happened. And I'm really interested, seeing these names. There was so many. The only person I noticed, legitimately, was Chad Gable. like as one of the fallen
Because
towns.
because Gable, it was such a hard shot close up
Yes,
on his face.
yes, it was.
Um, yeah, it was hard to see because there was so much just chaos. Some people thought they saw Gunther.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't buy that because he wasn't on the show, and I don't think they would
Yeah,
just
they
make him a
wouldn't do that. I
sacrificial
don't think with
lamb.
Gunther. I didn't see Road Dogg. I hope not. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that would be hurtful for you. So I hope the DOGG is okay. But
yes,
honestly, visually, this was cool, right?
yeah,
Such a super cool visual. Like if this was a day one wrestling company, super cool. For WWE, my question is, what is the follow up? And that is so much sometimes something that tripped Wyatt up. Is
right.
wow, this is so cool. How in God's name do you follow this up? Because okay, cool. I like Loomis as Mercy the Buzzard. I
I do too.
like Joe Gacy as the Huskus the Pig, but we're not gonna call them that, right? They're just
I
gonna
don't
be
think
who they
so.
are.
Yeah,
And how do you get there? And then the other thing is when you do get this into a ring, can Bo Dallas, we've never seen him at that level of a main event feud on the main roster. How does he handle it in that capacity? There's so many variables here, right? There's
yeah.
so many variables. There is a missing sixth, unless the sixth is the
Is
spirit
Bray?
of Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, the omnipresent of Bray.
Which that could be it. I still think we're missing a little Miss Bliss, who could be a great women's tag team champion with Nikki Cross again. There's a lot here, and ultimately, like I give it a thumbs up for production. I give it a thumbs up for wow. I can't wait to see how this follows up. But I do not want to see the only follow up here be a video package next week. I
Yeah,
want consistent follow up, consistent follow through, and I think honestly, some changes need to be made to next week's card. Gable should be off.
oh, 100.
Anyone who was in that attack should completely be off the show. We got a scramble here. They should do on SmackDown. Nick Aldis's phone should be ringing off the hook. I do not want to be on this show.
Yeah,
There is a
there should be
wicked
like a
group running
concern.
around. Yeah, I don't want to be. Kiana James should be like, I'm new here. I didn't sign up for this. Take me to SmackDown, please, because I don't want to be here. This is crazy.
Yeah, I really want this to kind of reverberate throughout all of the company. Like even tonight on NXT, I want some kind of like concern going on there. Like what the heck happened? I want some people addressing that and like kind of they're being on their everybody being on their toes and stuff. And then yeah, you move into this on SmackDown as well. And then like I said too, Raw, I want Raw to be really affected next week. I want production to be stripped down. I want to see some stuff that kind of wow, they really did massacre people. Like, yeah, I want there to kind of be the one concern. I'm with you, Robert, and you. I think you make some great points, especially with Bo Dallas as a new persona. And too, somebody mentioned here they don't have a workhorse in that group, and yeah, I don't think they really do necessarily yet. Unless,
Joe
yeah,
Gacy's all right. Joe Gacy.
Gacy's okay, yeah, I think, but
But Bo, honestly, at one point, Bo would have been the
he
workhorse.
would have been the workhorse.
It's just, can you work at the level that you're about to have to do? Because is this going to be? Is this more like a Kane to the Undertaker, where okay, you're the brother, so you just get to slide in and do all the moves, or does this come off as like a Chavo Guerrero? Love Chavo, but like after Eddie's passing, Chavo becomes a de facto tribute act, whether he wants to be or not. And I don't know if I necessarily want to see that from Uncle Howdy Bo Dallas doing this. And I just want it all to make sense.
Yeah,
Because honestly, there's a part of me that feels like maybe this should have been a SmackDown angle. Because on SmackDown, you've got Randy Orton, who's got all this lore and years of lore with Bray Wyatt. You've got Cody Rhodes, who was the NXT pro of Husky Harris, and he's the WWE champion, and there's just that definitive thing there. Here, the best thing I can say is, well, I guess by October, we got to be in a rivalry with Rollins and do the Hell in a Cell. But I'm just like already thinking, how do we get this in the ring? How do we keep this making sense?
yes.
Because promos are good, vignettes are good. That ending was awesome. But at the end of the day, you got to get in the ring, and that bell has to ring.
And they're by nature a chaotic group. I think it would behoove them to make them more so for a cult than they would make them supernatural, and like just uh, vicariously doing the work of Bray Wyatt, out of violence and scare tactics. But I think another issue you're running into is like, how are you going to make this a company wide thing? If this almost needs to be a company wide angle for time goes on, how do you kind of taper that, make them workers in the ring? Kind of, yeah. How are you going to weave this kind of out? It's going to be a difficult, challenging process as you're telling many other big stories on WWE, where this should be like a company wide angle almost, if you're looking, especially from like a comic book universe perspective kind of thing. So
I think right now it works on Raw. I think they can weave their way into SmackDown through means of Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble. You sick the Wyatt Sicks on Randy Orton in the Rumble because this dude burned Bray Wyatt alive.
Yeah.
He burned down the house. The spirit of Sister Abigail. Like I don't know how they didn't go, Randy, you got to be first up for this. They have to take you out because you took Bray out.
And that would have been a cool thing to do, because if you did that, I know we're fantasy booking here, but CM Punk doesn't like that. I'm not typically a fan either, but if you took Orton out, you could have had him done for, up until SummerSlam, and then you could have a match with Orton and maybe Uncle Howdy potentially. But yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued. I love the execution. I think it was beautifully done. I was up on social media way longer than I usually am. So that tells you something when it comes to this stuff. I was very engaged with it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's a fine line to walk, though. It's going to be curious how to do. Robert, you happen to walk a fine line with all the duties that you do. Why don't you tell us what you're up to?
Yeah, man, you could find me everywhere. First of all, like you see here, beautiful job with the Scotch tape, Dom, at DeFelice on all the social media platforms. You can go to dudefelice.com. That's like a nice little hub for all of my writings, because I do also work at Smart Out Moment, doing a lot of podcasts there. If you want to see some of the fantasy booking type stuff, Smart Out Moment's a great hub for that. We do a lot of mock drafts and later fantasy bookings. I'm always in and around the world of wrestling, because wrestling, Dom, as you know very well, is the one true sport.
That is the one true sport.
And thankfully, you've invited me to help out with One True Sport. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, yep, you guys can subscribe to OneTrueSportTV.com. Check out, we made a big announcement that Dustin Rhodes will be joining us for a live Q&A on June 24th, and that's available to the traveling champion tier. So check it out. We got some good stuff. Plus, on top of it, I do a lot of other things too, as one of a kind with RVD. New episode just dropped yesterday, as Rob and I cover his time in WCW. We go in depth about that, and that's a lot of fun. But then we have a really powerful RVDology, talk about regret, and Rob talks about Father's Day and certain things like that. It's a really, really good episode. Can't recommend that enough. Go to rvdtv.com to see it now, and be sure to give us some 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. We're trying to get the audio up on that baby. So go to rvdtv.com. Plus today, also dropping at noon at the same time, was Straight Talk with the Boss, Magnum TA, Greg Gagne. We talk about the Crusher. We talk about the Common Man, Dusty Rhodes. And Magnum gives some pretty darn good insight about Ricochet in his future.
Yes, he does. I am the producer on that one.
That's right.
I am, every week I'm very surprised at how in tune Magnum TA is with the modern world of professional wrestling. And he really is a great mind for the industry. And Greg Gagne is, of course, one of the greats of all time. And it's always fun just to get in there with them and see what they're thinking week to week.
Yes. And guys, every day on Monday through Friday, you can check out Rumor and Innuendo. We're live on Robert Karpelis's Twitter. We're live on my Twitter at Dominic D'Angelo and at WDCreative_ish. You can check us out sometimes live on Ad Free Show's YouTube if Jeff Jarrett isn't giving us the bump. And then we also are live on SE Scoops Twitter, Working Stiff Twitter too. That's a great podcast. You guys got to check it out. Just Patreon just dropped there too. Lots of stuff to plug. But Robert, this is a fun show. And look at this. What a run-in. We have Kevin Kellum.
Hey, that guy is so good. He's always doing some great stuff in the world of comedy and music. And, of course, over in the wrestling world, over at Sportskeeda. Kevin Callum's the man, and we love him here.
You guys were quite the dynamic duo at Wrestle.
Yeah, we were.
Mm-hmm. But guys, thank you all for joining us. And hey, you know what? Best of luck in your future endeavors.